Blog Talk Radio.
And welcome to episode 3 of Real Combat Media Radio, the boxing news radio podcast of www.realcombatmedia.com, the place where you can find up-to-date boxing and MMA news from around the globe. Check out our website at any time and be sure to follow us on Twitter at Real Combat Media, that's at Real Combat Media. Also, like our fan page by typing in realcombatmedia.com into your search bar on Facebook. I'm your host once again, John Campbell. You can also check out my Twitter at BoxingJonUK, and like my Facebook fan page by typing in BoxingJonUK. Make sure that you remember that my name's spelled Jon as opposed to Johm. Once again, I'm here with my co-host coming out of the Bronx in New York. It's the Boxing Maniac. How's it going, Maniac?
It's the Maniac. It's the Maniac. Yeah, I'm good, John, man. How you feeling?
I'm really
I'm sorry, man. I'm just, real quick, I got to let this out, man. Apparently, last night my team, the 49ers, we lost the Super Bowl. It's been a real stressful day for me, but now we get to talk some boxing, so that'll cheer me up.
Now, we have a great show planned for you once again, despite the cancellation of the card at the Barclays Centre, which was supposed to be running on February the 9th, which would have been the main topic of discussion. What we will be doing is recapping 4 fights over the past week. We've got the Felix Sturm-Sam Solomon bout coming out of Germany. Then we'll be talking about the IBF middleweight title bout in Sydney, Australia between Daniel Gill and Anthony Mundine. After that, we'll be going all the way to Puerto Rico to discuss the Juanma Lopez fight with Aldemar Santos. Also, we'll be talking about Carlos Molina's win over Corey Spinks. On top of this, we'll be talking about the unfortunate death of light middleweight prospect Omar Henry at the young age of 25 years old. And also we'll be discussing Floyd Mayweather's next opponent. Before we get started, though, I'd like to direct you to the Real Combat Media store, which is on www.realcombatmedia.com. And we have a wide range of products for you to potentially purchase. We have the elevation masks used by many top athletes to replicate high-altitude training. We also have Alpha Brain, a great new product on the market which opens up your intellectual channels and allows you to maximize your brain's potential. Type in Real Combat Media when prompted and you'll receive 10% off all RCM store goods. Okay, with all the admin out the way, let's get into it. 3-time middleweight champion of the world, Felix Sturm of Germany, was upset in a 12-round unanimous decision to Sam Solomon in an IBF eliminator. Did you have any idea this could happen? Because I had no idea. I thought Sturm was going to completely dominate this bout.
Wow. Very, very shocking. Very shocking. We, last week, we spoke on this fight. We all had Felix Sturm to win this fight. Pretty much everyone down the line couldn't see Sam Solomon going into Germany and getting a decision against Sturm. And he did. Even though he was coming in this fight with a nice winning streak, kind of the hot hand coming in, but you felt no way he beat Sturm. Even though we know that Sturm hasn't been looking good in his last 4 fights, even though he did beat, he gave a beating to Bick, But I didn't see this coming, man. Sam Solomon going into Germany and beating Stern was a shocker, pretty much the upset of the week. And even what's funny about this is that David Buffer, got my names all crazy today. Michael Buffer originally announced that Stern was the winner. He made a mistake, but it was Solomon. So I know that might have had the Germany crowd, the Germans, pretty upset about it. But, great victory. These are the kind of victories we need for boxing. The kind of wins where you figure, oh, this guy has no chance. He's not going to do it. He's old. He's a journeyman. He goes in there and he beats Stern. That's, much credit for Solomon. And now it sets up, a title shot against Daniel Gale. Both are Australians. This should be a big fight, in the land down under.
Now, what do you make of the fight itself, D? Now, early on, it was going exactly the way I thought. Stern was keeping it in the centre of the ring and at a good distance. Solomon would have his chances, but he'd be swinging wildly. He's not really connecting with many shots enough to be winning rounds. Now, however, what I didn't expect from Solomon was he began to apply good measured pressure, effective later on in the rounds. This was made easy for him by Stern, who really slowed down. Stern is not the high volume puncher at all anyway, but he really didn't throw enough punches to both keep Solomon at a distance and win rounds effectively. Would you agree that without taking anything away from Solomon, D, that it was Stern's for the taking, and the reason why Solomon was able to get the win was more Stern's fault than Solomon's doing?
Yeah, what I like is that he wasn't, not that I don't like, what I like is the judges decided to say, look, you have to go out there and win. Stern didn't do that. He left it in the judges' hands. You have to be aggressive. He might have felt, Solomon was not going to be there long. He said, man, I'm going to slap this guy, like a stepchild. That's how he probably felt. But that wasn't the case. Solomon was there. He came to fight. He came to win. Stern wasn't. When you don't throw punches, we've seen that De La Hoya, Trinidad. There's a bunch of fights. I could go down the line. But if you're not effective down the stretch, especially championship rounds, judges are not going to favor that. Stern didn't come. He didn't, he died out. And it cost him. It cost him a title shot.
Now, Solomon, taking into account that he wasn't an elite fighter like Stern, he boxed really well from the fourth round onwards. He'd get close and land effective hooks and uppercuts and smother Stern's long, straight punches. But at the same time, he'd done really well at avoiding the middle distance where Stern's jab would be really effective. He was either really up close, so Stern couldn't land his long shots, or really far away, so when Stern did flick out a jab, he was flicking out jabs at air. Did you see the distance to be a really important factor in the fight? What do you think really won the fight for Solomon?
Right, believe it or not, his toughness. He went in there and he was not going to be denied. That's what you saw. He never got discouraged. He never saw there was a doubt in his mind he was going to lose this fight. And we need more fighters like that. I think a lot of fighters go into fights like the one Solomon and Stern and kind of give up on themselves, kind of believe the hype of the next fighter. And if mentally you lose, then forget about it. You have no chance. Solomon came in and he did what he had to do. Smart fight. He had that. He wanted it more than Stern. Let's just put it like that. Now, it was a close fight. It's not like he dominated Stern. It's not like he gave Stern an ass whooping. That definitely wasn't the case there. He just fought an effective fight. And he took it to Stern. Stern couldn't finish off. And he lost. I don't feel bad for Stern. It's karma, man. Karma is a female dog. And that's exactly what happened. Martin Murray, Matthew Macklin. Now Gale, now Solomon. Can't escape it. Karma.
Yeah, well, I completely agree. And the weird thing is that I actually had Stern winning 7-5 against Gill, and I was surprised that in Germany he wouldn't get the decision, and then he wouldn't get the decision against Solomon, although Solomon did clearly win. When against Macklin and against Murray, he quite clearly lost and got the decision, so I was really confused. But, what do you make of, Sturm's future, D? Do you think Sturm can come back from this? Because he's had 2 real bad losses. He's lost his title, and then he's lost an eliminator against a guy who is much older and not as good as him. It's plain to say that Sturm is clearly a more skillful fighter, and he's getting beat on decision by these guys. Do you think there's any way back for Sturm?
That's a great question. And I was thinking about it earlier. And Sturm is a name at 160. He's definitely he's always going to have a chance. He's a name. The problem is now, does he have to? He might have to leave Germany now to get a fight. He lost 2 in a row. So let's say he wants, a Peter Quillen fight. A fight where he could bring his name back up. Or, a Gennady Golovkin. I mean, there's a lot of players at 160. If Sturm really wants, he's going to have to leave Germany to get a fight. Ain't no fighter who's going to want to go to Germany and fight him after losing. He doesn't have a belt. He has nothing that cause anybody to cross overseas. You understand?
Yeah, I completely agree. But there's one point that I'd like to throw at you, D. There's some fighters who don't necessarily have a big enough name to draw a guy like Sturm over to America, taking into account that many years ago Sturm lost his first title, his WBO title, to Oscar De La Hoya, and after that he really was disheartened after he got a bad decision, losing his title to De La Hoya, travelling over to America. Now, Germany is a real big mecca for boxing, and it can bring a lot of money, so do you still think that some fighters would actually travel over to Germany to fight Sturm, or do you completely disagree with that?
I wouldn't completely disagree. It might be fighters that need the name on their resume to go over there. But for example, like a fighter I just named, Peter Quillen. He's advised. Golden Boy. They're not gonna send, a guy like Peter Quillen to Germany to fight Sturm. Now, of course, right now that fight doesn't make sense at all. So, people might say, but who cares? No, those are the kind of opponents Peter Quillen need on his resume. Yes, there's the Macklins, the Murrays, the Darren Barkers. I mean, this is a bunch of fighters at 160. One of the deepest divisions in boxing right now, believe it or not. So, Sturm, yes, he can draw people over there because it is big money, absolutely. But as a fighter, I don't really see nobody itching to go over there. Because if Sturm doesn't have a belt, people's going to say, why go over there? Sam Solomon got no choice. Journeyman, all pretty much, left to the side like, oh, man, you ain't going to win. He had no choice. It's an eliminator. It's like, hey, he went in there. That's why he had to do it. Now, Sturm, like you said, he is a big money. So who knows? He might say, you know what? I'm going to call out Sergio Martinez. But Sergio, there's no way in the world Lou DiBella sent Sergio to Germany. He'll have to come over here. And understand that Sturm was discouraged with the De La Hoya decision, because we all know Sturm won that fight. Even De La Hoya, indirectly said he lost that fight. But look, if he wants to really revive his career, and it's not like he's taking beatings anyway. It's not like he's being stopped, So he's just losing. He's just being outboxed. He can't come back. He still could be a play at 160. But I really feel, in my opinion, that he needs to come to the U.S. and take on the top fighter. He wins, then that's it. He's back in the game, and he'll have people go to Germany. Now it makes sense. Right now, there's not going to be no one willing to go over there.
Yeah, I agree, and he's a three-time world champion, so I don't hold anything against him if he does decide to retire after 2 losses, after being undefeated for such a long time also, and having 3 world titles. He's lost to De La Hoya, as you said. It was completely disgraceful. I completely have Stern winning that. But what I will say is, if he wants to win a world title, he's not too far away. He doesn't need to win too many fights. He could stay in Germany. he could stay in Germany for the next 5 years, next 10 years if he wants to. He could fill stadiums and he could fight guys that aren't brilliant and he could make a lot of money doing it. But if he really wants to challenge for the title, you are right, he will have to continue his career in the United States and fight guys like, as you said, Darren Barker. He could go to England and fight Macklin, Murray, Barker and all these guys. Do you think that Sturm's going to really consider retiring after this fight, or do you think that he's just going to continue carrying on? Because the thing with Sturm is, as you say, he's got a very sustainable style. He's not got the sort of style where he's used up by 30 or he's used up by 32 years old. He looks fine. He doesn't seem to be showing signs of age in any way. He just didn't throw as many punches as he'd like to, but he's a really skillful fighter, and that's been the way that he's drew fighters to him, and he's got fighters to go to Germany because he's skillful, not because he's a big name or a big character. What do you think he's going to do next? What would you advise him to do, Dave?
Well, like my last statement, I really feel that Sturm, he still could be a play at 160, but he might have to just, if he wants to be, you're right, he can sit back in Germany, make a lot of money. We know he makes money, a lot of money in Germany. But if he wants to have that name, if he wants to be that guy at 160 again, he will have to travel. Now, if I'm his team, no. I would not consider retiring, not at all. Back to the drawing board. It's just like a sport. You lose two close games in a row. That doesn't mean you're a bad team. You're just not doing certain things right. But you're not doing everything. You're not doing everything wrong. It's just certain things. And Sturm, he has to look at film, which I'm assuming he does, and say, look, man, I got to be more aggressive at times. Because now he's saying to himself, shit, I can't even get decisions at home. And it's not like he's being robbed. There's close fights, but we're so used to people beating him clearly. Matthew Macklin, the obvious, and him lose. So you see a close fight like the Gale fight, like the Solomon fight, you're like, hell no, they're not getting that decision. And they do get that decision. So, it's tough. It's whatever he wants. He definitely could be a play at 160 still. People might say he's washed up. If he was getting knocked out, being stopped, then yes, I can say he has to really consider, but not at all, man. Sturm could give a bunch of fighters at 160 a lot of problems still. And he's a name. So if I'm Sturm's peoples, like I said, back to the drawing board, let's get back in that gym, let's put in that work, and let's start calling out these fighters in the U.S. Let's see. You got to take a risk, man. He has to do that in order to get there, to have that name at 160 again. Yes, you're right. He can stay there. He can stay at Germany. He makes a lot of money there. But if he's going to be a player at 160, he's going to have to come to the U.S., John.
Now, I've just come into some news on Facebook. I've just been sent an article, a press release, actually, and I'd like to talk about that very shortly. But first of all, Sam Solomon, it looks like he's going to get a shot against Daniel Geale next. Do you see any chance in this guy finally getting that ever-elusive world title? Because I never expected him to win many rounds against Sturm, and he won 6 or 7 and maybe even 8 or 9 rounds quite convincingly. Do you think there's any way he could beat Daniel Geale, or do you think that's one step too far?
When you look at that, it's easy to count them out. Geale just been on fire lately. But Solomon has a chance here. Solomon has a great chance of beating Geale. I'm more than assuming this fight will take place in Australia. 2 Australian fighters. It'll be a huge fight, in Australia. So, he won't have to travel much. Neither would Geale. But I think right now, if there's anybody at 160, not Sergio Martinez, is Daniel Geale. Now, people say, oh, wait a minute, Gennady Golovkin. Slow down. He hasn't beaten those 160 fighters yet. You understand? A couple. Geale, he has been winning. He went into Germany. He beat Sturm. Sturm is better than anybody on Golovkin resume. Hands down. He went in Fort Mundine. Now, people, Mundine. Well, that's his only loss. And he dominated Mundine in the rematch. Won it clear, pretty much a shutout. Daniel Gale, as of right now, is the hottest fighter at 160, not named Sergio Martinez. Now, people's going to make the Golovkin. Okay, whatever, but you can't take that from Gale. Right now, Gale has a hot hand. Solomon will come in again, will not be intimidated by the moment. He feel, look, if I did it once, I'm going to do it again. But I just think at this moment, Daniel Gale will be too much for him. I see Daniel Gale winning a unanimous decision.
Yeah, I completely agree. Maybe even a late stoppage, but all in all, outworked, outgunned, and outwilled. The older fighter beats the younger, more skillful, more talented, more experienced at the top level fighter. Now, I've just received a press release, and it's quite interesting. We have a big card coming to on the 30th of March in Monaco, and it's going to be a 4-man super middleweight elimination tournament between Edwin Rodriguez, Zoltz Erde, Denis Grachev, and Ezequiel Maderna, who are all going to be in a 4-man elimination tournament called the Monte Carlo $1 Million Super 4. Also on the card will be the WBA middleweight champion Gennady Golovkin fighting the Japanese contender Nobuhiro Ishida, and we'll also have a European light middleweight title contest between Hatton's Sergey Radchenko and Adriano Nietzsche. Now, first of all, tournament boxing, D. Tournament boxing. Do you love tournament boxing? Because this is something that we need to see more of.
No, that is beautiful, man. This is beautiful for the sport. And I really give a lot of credit to the fighters and the promoters that go on with this. This one makes boxing look good. We need more tournaments like this. You know, this shows fighters are willing to show that they're the best. And this is how you do it. Hey, let's do a tournament. We saw that with the Super 6. A lot of people said it was a waste of time because it took on. It kind of carried on. But honestly, I like the Super 6. You know, with all the injuries and all the people, you know, end up leaving the Super 6, it still end up being a good tournament. And we had a unanimous champion. Same thing with the Bantamweight tournament. That was a good tournament. And now we have, you know, a middleweight, you know, tournament here. So I love it, man. This is what boxing needs more of. And this is something the fans love. You never hear nobody complain because we know that when you get tournaments, it means winner versus winner. So it's only going to be the best fighting the best. And that's what we like. And it's already agreed to. It's not like if I win and he wins, well, I don't know, you know, he has to take drug tests and he has to, you know, cut his middle finger off to fight me, you know, all these ridiculous things, man. I love tournaments. I love them, and hopefully we can see more of this. Hopefully.
Well, yeah, now, you named the Super 6, which I adored. I loved the Super 6 because I loved all the fighters that are in the Super 6. So seeing them fight each other was really, really good. You also talk about the Bantamweight tournament, which made Abner Mars. That made Abner Mars the fighter he is today, and he's moved on even bigger and better from that because it finds out from a group of fighters who actually is the best or who is the top two best and separates the wheat from the chaff and then actually put the best fighters in those situations in super fights. I'd even like to go back to the middleweight tournament around a decade ago with Bernard Hopkins, William Joppe, and all those guys who all held belts at middleweight. That was brilliant. Now, the problem with this that I've instantly saw is you've got Edwin Rodriguez, who's a brilliant up-and-comer, potential future world champion. You've got two other undefeated fighters who look really good. You've got Denis Grachev, who just fought Lucian Bute and gave a good account of himself. All these guys at the moment are sort of C+, B- fighters. Now, could this just be a tournament where the promoters make big money? It's in Monte Carlo. It's all nice. It's all fancy. You've got Gennady Golovkin on the main event, and then nothing happens after it. Like the winner doesn't really receive anything special. They'll just carry on continuing their career because that's the impression that I sort of get. That it's a sort of one-time thing, D, and there's no sort of continuation from that. What would you like to say about that?
Well, it's possible. We understand how this business is run. But no, I think it's setting up a potential opponent at 160 for Triple G. Because right now, everyone is trying to market the 160, as it's being marketed as Gennady Golovkin as the number one fighter. Not number one, the best outright, because we know it's Sergio, but they trying to get him opponents at 160. You can see they pushing him to be one of the faces of boxing. And you can't blame him. The guy has a fan-pleasing style. He has nice demeanor. So you can see why. Now, if it goes, I think the winner does fight winner, and eventually the winner that four-man ends up being opponent for Golovkin. We already heard Edwin Rodriguez as a possible opponent for Golovkin. There was rumors he turned down $500,000 to fight Golovkin. I know that couldn't be true. Ain't nobody gonna turn down $500,000. I don't care. Hey, if I gotta fight Mike Tyson, shit, I'm gonna get in there. $500,000. Those paydays don't come a lot. In boxing, especially with a fighter like that up and coming. So no, I see this going through. I hope I'm right. Anything is possible. You make a good point there about this could just be a way of promoters saying, listen, let's just make this big money. Let's just save a tournament. Then after the winners, both guys win. We go our own way. So we'll see.
Yeah, I love tournament boxing, and I really think there should be more of it, and it should be more structured. But tournament boxing in this sort of way, there's no sort of point to it. It seems a bit pointless, except for the fighters that are involved, of course. But now, for 5 minutes, D, let's talk about Golovkin, because you know that we're going to call John Scully in around 5 minutes' time. What do you make of this opponent for him? Do you think it's quite a step up in class? I'd say I'm quite impressed with that. Obviously, we could have bigger fights, but we're not going to sit here and moan. We know that Gennady Golovkin's not been getting the real opposition that we want him to get. But just right now, quite soon as well. We know that the fight's quite soon. This could set him up for a real big fight at the end of the year.
Ashita, one thing when I first heard of it is like, oh man, I'm not. But Ashita, he's a solid opponent. He comes to fight. We all know obviously his biggest win was, beating James Kirkland. But after that, he couldn't muster the win against Dimitri Parag. Then he loses to Paul Williams. In tough fights, he was there. He stood there. He was there to fight. But I think this is another opponent. It's just a stay busy fight for Gennady Golovkin. Ishida doesn't really pose no threat to Golovkin. But I'll tell you this, he'll tag Golovkin. Golovkin is going to get hit in this fight. But he's just going to be another opponent that Golovkin walks down. He'll come to fight. At least I know Ishida's going to come to fight. He's not going to be there running around, scared. He'll come to fight, but, it'll be another one bites the dust. So, but it's a decent fight. I'm not gonna trash it. I'm not gonna say, oh, that's a garbage fight. Some people might feel, but Ishida's battle tested, and he showed that he's tough. So I can't really complain about that. I know he comes to fight. He comes to win. He doesn't win much, but when he comes to fight, he fights. You got to respect that. And we know that he'll give. He's gonna try to give Golovkin all he can handle.
Well, the one problem that I've got with Ishida is, firstly, he's lost his last two fights, and I know that that's against Dimitri Parag and Paul Williams, who are obviously really good fighters. The one thing is, he's feather-fisted, so he's not even going to be able to keep Gennady Golovkin off him. I think he's had around 10 knockouts, less than 10 knockouts in 25 wins. He's not going to be able to. He's not known as a big puncher. He's feather-fisted. Not only that, he's a natural light middleweight. He's the only reason he fights at middleweight for the past few fights is because he's getting old. He's not going to be. It's just going to be like Gabriel Rosado all over again, in my opinion. I think he's quite skillful, but I think Golovkin just cuts through him like a knife. Do you want to make a prediction, Dave?
Oh yeah. He's going to snap him like a Chico stick. If Ishida could go 3 rounds, man, that'd be a moral victory for him. It's not going to last long. But what's funny is, regardless how quick it ends, Ashita get his hits in. He'll hit Golovkin. Golovkin's very hittable, but he just, he got Paulie's strength. He got Malinazi's strength, so he's not going to be able to do much to Golovkin. And like you said, it is going to be quite a mirror of the Rosado fight, but I think less competitive. And he's just gonna, like I said, another one bite the dust. Golovkin wins. His name keeps getting up there. Max Kellerman, who has a man crush on Golovkin, is gonna make him sound like Mike Tyson at 20 years old. And he hopefully his third fight of the year is an opponent where we can say, wow, okay, this fight has kind of a 50-50 chance here. At least, a 45-55. This Ashita Golovkin fight is like 90-10. It's like 9-1. He's not. His chances. He's going to be a huge underdog in this fight.
Okay, now we're ready to call John Scully very soon, but first of all, I'd like to say that this interview is brought to you by the RCM Feed World Hunger, which you can find at www.realcombatmedia.com. The Post-Harvest Project provides aid in the form of technologies for farms and fisheries in deprived areas. Follow the link on www.realcombatmedia.com to make a donation to this charitable cause. Also, if you'd like to appear on the show at any stage tonight, please feel free to call 347-324-5998. Now, we're going to call Mr. Scully and see what he's got to say. Bear with me. Okay, we was unable to contact him at this stage, but we will call him very, very shortly. Now, John Scully, he's going to have a lot to talk about. We know that Chad Dawson's left him for Eddie Mustafa. How would you feel if you was John Scully in this situation, Dave?
Wow, it's very disappointing as a trainer. You and the fighter build a bond, becomes like a brother. Depending how old the trainer is, more like a son-father relationship. And, he ended up jumping ship on Scully after the Ward fight. Word is Chad Dawson didn't even call him. Scully was trying to contact him. He had to find out through his social media that, Chad Dawson was with Eddie Mustafa. You get heartbroken, man, because you're all grown men, and it doesn't hurt to say, listen, John, I'm going to move on. I'm going to go with such and such, but not calling, that's not professional. That's not the way things are. And Scully and Chad know each other for years, so I know Scully feels a certain way about it, and I don't blame him. I would too.
Well, it's difficult to us to understand the level of relationship that a trainer and a fighter have, because Emmanuel Stewart was very open about his relationships with Thomas Hearns. He'd form a really close bond, and he'd get attached to his fighters because you sort of fall in love in a way with these guys. You get really attached to them, and you become more than just professional partners in a sport. And just to break up in that way, considering all the stuff that John Scully's done for him, it does show a level of unprofessionalism. Now, we know that Dawson's also got a track record with trainers, so do you see that Dawson to be at the blame here?
Yeah, you got to look. No one says that you have to do anything, but from a man's perspective and out of respect, you have to give him a call and tell him, look, this is what I'm deciding to do. This is not someone he just started training with. They go back to the early 2000s, training. So, of course, Mustafa's going to feel like a slap in his face. It's like, and then he has to find out through social media I mean, that's, anyone will feel, heartbroken over that. It's not like, I don't think Scully's mad about that he chose another trainer. It's more about not informing him, letting him know, look, I'm going a different route. Now, people might feel it's okay, but that's not the way you handle business, especially with someone you had a relationship with for a lot of years. It's just, that's not the way you go about it. So I'm really eager to see what he has to say.
It is really disappointing, but we know that John Scully's here to stay. He's 45 years old. He's a young trainer. He was a light heavyweight contender and a title challenger himself as a fighter. He got a good record together. And he's also trained other world champions. He's trained Jose Rivera. He's trained Chad Dawson. He's trained a number of fighters. He's also been an analyst on ESPN. Now, do you see him just continuing to go on and getting a number of world champions in his stable from now on?
Well, that's a good question. That's something that we're gonna have to see going forward. At the moment, he doesn't have a huge name in his stable, and he's a good trainer. He showed it with Chad Dawson, and he'll definitely get people. You know how this business is with boxers. Boxers like the hop from trainer to trainer, sort of like, boyfriend, girlfriend kind of thing. Like, let me see what I can do with this trainer, and so on and so forth. But Scully, from what I saw, him and Chad had good chemistry. Look what he did against Hopkins. He showed a lot of, he kept them poised when Hopkins was using them dirty tactics. He was there, man. He kept them level-headed. And, they had a good game plan going into the Hopkins fight. And Chad Dawson won that fight clearly. Mm-hmm. Something not too many fighters could do against the great B.I.
Okay, Dave, we're going to try John Scully one more time.
Sorry, the person.
Okay, we can't get through to him now, but we'll continue to try, and hopefully we'll get him on at some stage later on. Now, okay, we're moving on for now. Now, also, we had Gil versus Mundine in a rematch dating back from 2009. That, at the time, it was for Gil's IBO middleweight title. Now, it's for Gil's IBF middleweight title. Now, Mundine won the first fight by a close split decision, which has constantly led to controversy. But this fight, we saw Gil in a much more decisive, unanimous decision. Did you enjoy this fight, Dave?
Wow, Gil. I just spoke about him, a couple of minutes, and he's like I said, he's the hottest fighter at 160, not named Sergio Martinez. He dominated Mundine. It's bittersweet, man, because the only fighter that he lost to, Mundine, in the rematch, he crushes Mundine. He totally dominated him, and it's just Gil just looks like he's getting better fight after fight, and I'm becoming a fan of his. I really am, and I see big things for Gil. And I like him now. I'm pretty sure he takes the Solomon fight, and then I think from there on he looks for a fight perhaps against Triple G. That's something he had mentioned, that Gary Shaw that they willing to make, here in the U.S. So people been calling for Gil to come here in the U.S. and fight a big fight. So hopefully he fights Solomon sometime in 2 to 3 months, and sometime in the fall, they could probably get a Daniel Gale Triple G fight.
No, I agree. I wasn't a massive fan of Gil either. I saw him as a good fighter, But in terms of an elite fighter, I saw him as more as a paper champion until he beat Stern. But now I'm really impressed. Like, I mean, the way he got on his feet and got his feet in place was brilliant. His head movement was superb. Cutting off the ring was good as usual. Now, when he got close, his handwork was brilliant. Like, the way he'd get close, get the reaction from Mundine in these defensive shots like the 1-2, and then he'd counter it with the right hand and the left hook, and he was really good. He fired the right amount of attrition, and he really has come on as a fighter. He's improved much more since the first fight, and we didn't get to see it as much against Stern because we know that Stern's a really good fighter, but he really put on a showcase in Australia last night. Well, not last night, last week. What now? Do you see Giles to be? You say he's the hottest name. Do you see him to be the second best fighter, or would you still give that to Golovkin?
As of right now, Giles' body of work, it's more than Golovkin at the moment. And just the way he's been winning. You know, like I said, beating Sturm in Germany goes a long way. Remember, he has two wins. 2 wins in Germany. Sebastian Sylvester and then Stern. One of the hardest places to get decisions. Gail did it twice. You know, the guy, he's just on fire right now. He's just looking, not that he's winning, he's looking good as he's winning. He's getting better. His technique, the way he throws punches, he's smart. You know, he pick his spots. So, you know, it's just, he's the hottest fighter at 160. That's the bottom line.
I know we did see a lot out of Gil. We did see he looked really confident there. He was even showboating at times, which we know he comes across as quite a reserved guy. It's not the sort of thing that he does, but he was doing the odd bit of a dance. He had a bit of a shrug of his shoulders, stuff like that. You know, stuff that's entertaining, stuff we like to see. Now, when Martinez comes to retire, do you see Gil taking the baton? Will it be a case of Gil versus Golovkin, and then that's the way we solve the division? Or do you see other names involved here? Do you see the Peter Quillins and the Martin Murrays of the world getting involved with this? Or do you think it is going to be a 2-horse race in the middleweight division?
Oh, you know, like I said, this is one of my favorite divisions right now, 160. As long as they can get the right fights done, there's a lot of mix and match fights here, a lot of intriguing matchups we can have. Sergio Martinez, we know, bar none, number 1 fighter at 160. No one argued that. Number 2 has to be Gil, in my opinion. Gil is number 2. 3, I'll give it to Golovkin. Because everyone else at 160 is solid fighters. You know, I hope that Sergio, before he retires, he fights a Gil or Golovkin. You know, and we had this discussion before about Sergio Martinez doesn't need to fight Golovkin right now. And we felt like, why not? And a lot of people want to see the fight. You know, I don't blame them. But I just feel that what Sergio has had to do to get to the top of 160, all that tough, he had to go through a gauntlet, man, similar to, like the Kyle Froch. So right now, he calls the shots at 160. He can. He's the champion. Even though the money man at 160 is Chavez Jr., and of course you got Sturm in Germany, but here in the U.S., Chavez Jr. is the money man. And that's why if Sergio gets through Martin Murray, which, people got to forget, that's not an easy fight, And if he gets through that, many feel he's going to take the Junior rematch.
Okay.
Only because of the money.
We're going to continue this discussion after, but for now, I think we've got John Scully.
All right.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Scully. You're live on Real Combat Media Radio. How's it going?
Everything's great. How you guys doing?
Yeah, it's great to see you. First of all, I'm going to introduce you to my co-host D, and then I'm going to give you some questions.
All right, no problem.
Okay.
Hey, Scully, how you doing, man? It's the BoxingManiac. How you feeling today?
Everything's great. How you doing?
Man, thanks, man. We just really thank you for your time, and looking forward to this interview.
Now, Mr. Scully, one thing I read about you is, even though you retired as a professional boxer about a decade ago, since then you've kept yourself really busy in the gym and you're sparring on a regular basis. What makes you so keen and motivated to keep in shape now you're not a competitive fighter anymore?
Well, I tell you, it's a very funny thing you just mentioned that, because literally less than 20 minutes ago I got done sparring 5 rounds with one of my fighters, Javier Flores, an undefeated welterweight. And I'll tell you, it's kind of a funny thing. It's a true story. When I was a kid, when I first started boxing, there was a couple pros in Hartford that really were tough guys and good fighters, and they kind of made me a fighter. They kind of really helped me by the school of hard knocks. I mean, these guys hurt me to the body, and I still have a scar inside of my mouth where one of them split my lip open from the inside out. And just really tough guys, and they really put me to fire to become a fighter as a kid. And what happened was, years later, both of them kind of wanted to make comebacks, and I was pro at the time. And so they came to the gym, and they were training for these comebacks, and they sparred with me. And it was kind of like that to me, how much they had deteriorated, that I literally had to take it so easy on them. And, I felt bad, and actually I wanted to, inside I wanted to tell them, like, come on, you guys, let's go to war like we used to when I was a kid, 10 years ago, 12 years ago. But they just had let themselves go, and they just didn't have it anymore. And, I really had to take it easy on them, and I just hated to see that. And I always vowed from that moment on, from that period on, I said, when I get older and if I'm boxing, nobody's going to have to take it easy on me. If I'm boxing with somebody, they're going to have to earn it. So I've kept myself in shape because I like to box. I love boxing, and so that's kind of my thing. I just like to be in there with the young guys and push myself and keep myself, it's almost like visiting the fountain of youth. So, as long as I can do it, I'm going to do it.
Well, that's a very proud attitude to have. I respect that. As a pro, the biggest name on your resume is probably Michael Nunn, who you went 12 rounds with. What have you got to say about Michael Nunn as a fighter? Was he the best fighter you fought?
Yeah, I would say him and Henry Maskey were very comparable. Henry Maskey was a very good technical fighter. But Michael Nunn was Michael Nunn. I mean, just an excellent fighter. I actually, really looked up to him. And when I got the offer to fight him, I was extremely excited to fight him. I was very anxious just because I admired him. I looked up to the guy, and I was a fan. And when I fought him, I feel like I really stepped my game up, and I fought the fight of my life. Post fight, I actually, according to the punch stats, I actually landed more punches than he did, and I landed at a much higher connect percentage. But it was a good fight. He got the decision, and but he was great. I'm honored to fight him. And Henry Maskey was similar. I mean, Henry Maskey was very tall, southpaw, good boxer. Not a banger at all, just a really disciplined boxer. So I would point to those two guys as the two best that I fought.
Now, your retirement from the sport wasn't planned because it was the result of a number of fights falling through for you, and eventually I'm guessing that you got frustrated and decided to pack it in. Taking this into account, was you ever tempted to get back in the ring in the past 10 years, as we know that you still train, you still keep in shape, and you're still sparring?
I've never, to be honest with you, and that's another reason why I kept sparring, was so that I wouldn't have the urge to want to come back and fight. I mean, I actually have the best boxing career you could imagine right now, because I don't have to worry about winning or losing. I don't have to fight because I want, because I have to. I can just box anytime I want with anyone I want, and so I've never really felt tempted to make a comeback. I like it this way. I like that I can box. Like I said, I did 5 rounds today with an undefeated welterweight, and so I'm very content with being able to box. anytime I want, and if I don't want to, I don't. And so, you know, I learn from other people's mistakes, and I've seen other guys come back, and again, just like those two guys I told you about, they tried to come back, and they were the same people, but they were different people. They had just lost something, and I wouldn't ever want to be in that position. So, you know, I had my time and my opportunities, and you know, and I took them, and now I use my boxing to help the other guys, the younger guys, just learn from what I learned.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point, but would you not sort of say that when you're a fighter, it's you in the ring and you're in control? Like, as a trainer, I could imagine it being quite frustrating sometimes when your fighter sits down, like Dawson against Ward, for example. He sits down in the corner, and there's nothing you can do in that situation to help the guy. There's only so much you can say, and then you've got to send them out and get back out the ring. Like, do you not feel like that lack of control makes you sort of want to be able to box again?
Sometimes, I mean, you know, you well, that's another thing. Like, sometimes I box with my fighters because, like, I'll give you an example. There's a particular move, a maneuver that I like to teach my fighters, and I was training this one guy, and he wasn't really picking it up, and so I told him, I said, watch, I'm gonna spar this other guy. I said, you watch, and he watched me, and you know, I was pulling off this maneuver that I do. I'm pretty good at it, and he was telling his man, like, oh man, you know, I see what he means. So I literally showed him through me doing it, and so I kind of, you know, I enjoy that, and you know, it is frustrating. I mean, you get a guy, and you know, sometimes fighters. I mean, Dawson with Ward. I mean, the fact of the matter is he was very drained from making the weight. You know, it is what it is, and I could see that he was really struggling, and I know that he has, you know, he's a much better fighter than he showed. I mean, you know, maybe he would have lost anyway, but anyone who saw that fight and thinks that that's the best that Chad had to offer, obviously they know better than that. They have to know better. And so it's frustrating to see Chad lose in that manner just because I know that his full capability is such a much better fighter than that.
Yeah, now, when you did box, you sparred with some of the greats. You sparred with Roy Jones Jr., you sparred with James Toney. So you've lived and breathed in this sort of environment, despite the fact that you didn't quite make it to the pinnacle of the sport yourself, but you've been around these guys. And obviously, as we've already discussed, you're a very hands-on manager, it's clear to say. Now, is this part of the experience which has led you to become such a great trainer, your actual hands-on approach and your experience sparring with these guys, not only because you've got years and years fighting experience? Like, is this all a combination which makes you the trainer that you are?
Oh, definitely. I mean, the fact is, a lot of the stuff that I know, you know, knowledge I have, and stuff that I'm good at explaining to people, the fact is I didn't learn it from a trainer. I learned a lot of stuff from boxing with Roy Jones, James Toney, Vinny Pazienza, you know, different guys, Henry Maskey. I actually sparred with Henry Maskey for 3 weeks after we fought. So, yeah, I've learned a lot of things from actually hands-on experience. And that's experience that, you know, you can only gain one way. There's only one way to figure that stuff out. You have to be in there. So, yeah, I definitely, without a doubt, use the experience I gained from being in the ring with those guys, definitely.
Right, let's talk about your fighters. Okay, the first one I'm interested to talk about is a heavyweight you've got, who's got a great record of 16 wins undefeated with 15 KOs. It's George Foreman III, none other than George Foreman himself, son. Now, talk to me about this guy. Do we have the second coming of the Foreman family?
I mean, I tell you what's amazing about George is he's about 6'4", and he weighed in his last fight about 240, 241. So, and if you remember when Ali fought George, his father, he was quoted as saying how I'm back in the ring with another big bad monster. And the fact is, Big George at that time was 6'3", 225. So his son is considerably larger. He's a monster. He's a big kid. And he's still not as big as the Klitschko's, but he's big. And he actually fights very, very similar to his dad. And if you watch him, it's almost like you're watching a guy imitate Big George Foreman. He's a work in progress. He didn't start boxing till later. He was I think he was 20 when he started boxing. So he's a work in progress. He's still learning, kind of learning on the job. So as his trainer, I'm in no rush. Even though he's got a good record, I'm in no rush to put him in with the top guys or anything like that.
Now, I've seen a few of his fights, and he does have great power like his dad, but he doesn't appear as ferocious. He seems slightly more reserved than George did in his first career, shall we say. Now, one thing I do see the son having over the father is the dexterity and footwork. I seem to be slightly more athletic than his father was. Do you see a lot of similarities, and do you see the son to have the edge in dexterity over Big George?
Right. Well, actually, it's funny you mention that because before the last fight, we're in the gym and he's shadow boxing, and I told him, I said, loosen up, get on your toes a little bit, and I tell you, he got on his feet, and he started boxing and bouncing, and he actually looked more like Ali than he looked like his dad. I mean, he got on his toes, and you're accurate. You said he was athletic. He's very athletic. He's the type of guy. I mean, he could have been maybe a tight end in football. He's got that athletic ability. So he could actually probably be a better boxer than a slugger. And I've told him that I think we might even, start working more on his boxing ability as opposed to trying to go in there and take guys out. Because he's tall, he's got a pretty good jab, but he definitely has the footwork that his father didn't have early on.
Yeah, well, I completely agree, and I'm guessing that that's how he would alter his career over a period of time. He's not necessarily needed to yet, but, you're going to eventually have to add more strings to his bow. Now, also, you've already mentioned one of them, and I just can't believe you said that you've just come back from sparring with a guy. You have two undefeated Puerto Rican prospects in Javier Flores at 147 and Jonathan Perez at 140. What do you make of these guys' chances to get world titles? Because we've seen good stuff from them, but do you really think these guys, you've got a potential world champion, if not at least one of them, to win a world champion?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'll tell you the thing I like about both of these guys is they train just anything I tell them to do, any running, any drills, whatever it is. I mean, Javier, especially, he's the type of kid that we could train for an hour and a half and really rigorous training, and everyone's getting ready to leave, and he's off in the corner of the gym doing his own thing. He's doing extra stuff. He's always doing extra things, and he probably does too much road work. I have to slow him down, and a lot of guys, it's hard to get him out of the house to go running, but this kid, he'll ask you to take him running. He wants to go running, and he's got great power. So we'll work on a few little things that he's never done before. He hasn't really had to because he's been knocking guys out, but he's definitely picking up some new little subtle skills, and so I'm excited about working with him. Again, he's not a guy I'm in a terrible rush with. He's a work in progress, but I could see it after about 5, 6, 7 more fights, him stepping up and maybe a top 10 opponent at that time.
Mm-hmm. Now, we're looking at the situation now, and you're a successful trainer, but as a trainer, you're relatively young at 45 years old. Do you see yourself staying at the top level of the sport for the next 30, 40 years and producing dozens of champions and going down as an all-time great? Do you ever see yourself venturing away from the sport at any stage?
You know what? I'll tell you a funny, I wouldn't recommend this strategy for kids. I sometimes I hate to say it because I don't want kids to really follow it, but when I first started boxing when I was 14, my first time officially in the gym, I was 14, and I literally, from the first day, I knew I was going to be in this game forever. I mean, it's just the craziest thing. I mean, I knew right away that it was for me. And if you would have asked me 6 months into my boxing at 14, if you would have asked me what are you going to be doing in 30 years, I would have said training. I'll probably either still be fighting or I'll be training somebody. So I've always known that, and I don't see any reason to stop. I really love boxing, and I put a lot of time. I mean, literally, I started boxing. This March will be 31 years that I started boxing ago. So it'd be kind of crazy to put all that time in and then leave it. So I'll be in it to the end, I'm sure.
Now, of course, you had a highly publicised split with the light heavyweight champion of the world, Chad Dawson, a fight you had a long relationship with, which dated back to his teens or when he was a kid. Now, what do you feel that his reasons were, taking into account that you did such a great job in the Bernard Hopkins fight, getting him through that when he had a lot of mental pressure in the ring? You know, we know how Bernard Hopkins likes to fight. He likes to get the edge mentally as well as physically. And the rough tactics seemed to be getting to him at some stages, and you managed to keep him together and get him through that fight with a win that a lot of fighters have looks like they were going to get against Hopkins, but gassed out later on in the fight. They just seemed to give up. Now, how after producing such a good piece of training in that fight to breaking up, it just seemed so like such a shock.
You know what? I'll tell you a funny thing. You know, I've always liked Chad, and I've known Chad since he was 11. But I'm not surprised. I mean, he's a different kind of kid when it comes to things like this. And I I don't know the deep rooted aspects of it psychologically, but you know, he's the type. I mean, all these years we've known each other, and the help that I've been able to give him, him throwing that away doesn't surprise me. He's the type of kid, he could do that, and I don't think it makes him blink. You know, I've always kind of known that about him. And I knew when I started training him this last time, I knew that as soon as he lost or didn't look good, that he would look for a new trainer. Just you know, I don't know if it's a character flaw or what, but I just feel like he's the type, just he'll look for a reason other than maybe something to do with himself. To be honest with you, it's no secret to a lot of people, but again, the weight for him was a huge issue. And the funny thing to me is about 4 weeks before the fight, I made my concerns extremely, very, very clear to his strength coach that I felt things were being done in the wrong manner. And I was basically told to mind my own business, that I didn't know what I was talking about. And I said, listen, I can see that this is a problem, that the weight is not coming off the way it's supposed to, and Chad is going to be affected, and I'm going to get the blame as the trainer. And that's exactly what happened. And Chad knows that, but by the same token, he's still with the strength coach. That person is still with him, and I'm not. So I don't know. I don't know what happened there. I haven't talked to Chad. He hasn't talked to me since the fight. So I really don't know, to be honest with you.
But of course, the attachment that you inevitably get with a fighter after knowing them for well over a decade, it can hurt. But you're going to have to get through it if he eventually says, "Listen, I don't think it's working out. This is the way I've got to go." But would you say that the manner in which he did it, having you find out over social networking, for example, do you think the manner in which he did it sort of shows a level of immaturity and lack of professionalism?
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, listen, this is a guy, he did the same thing to Emmanuel Stewart. When he came, and I didn't realize that at the time until after, when I started training him before the first Hopkins fight, he was supposed to go train with Emmanuel Stewart, and I thought that they had like an amicable breakup. But from what Emmanuel said, Chad just didn't show up for training camp, and he went with me instead. So, and he's done that when he left Eddie Mustafa Muhammad the first time. He did the same thing. Eddie didn't know. He just didn't show up. So Chad is the type. I mean, it's like if you have a girlfriend and you want to break up with her. Chad, instead of calling her or meeting her and telling her, he'll just never call her again and change his number. So I kind of knew that about him from the beginning. So I'm to be honest with you, I'm not like worried about it or anything. I'm the type. I mean, whatever the reason is, if we're not good together, if you feel like you need somebody else, then that's okay with me. So I'm not worried about it at all. Because to be honest with you, training for the first Hopkins fight was really good. The second Hopkins fight was 95% good. I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. After the fight, he gave me the trunks that he wore against Hopkins right in the dressing room. He handed them to me, I get the show of respect or appreciation or whatever. Training for the last fight was not fun. I did not like it. Just there was whatever it was with him. I don't know. He had seemingly changed to me, and So to be honest with you, I kind of had it in my head that I wasn't going to return for another training camp anyway. So it kind of worked out for both sides.
Okay, I've got one question from a co-host of ours who's not on the air currently, and then I've got one final question. I'm going to ask the one from the co-host first. It's a bit off the subject, but Jenna J asked, stylistically, which fighter now or in history could give Floyd Mayweather Jr. the most issues?
Man, you know, I think Sugar Ray Leonard and Tommy Hearns both would be a nightmare for Floyd Mayweather, and you know, probably even more so Tommy Hearns with that unbelievable jab. I mean, Tommy Hearns had a very, very hard jab, and Tommy Hearns was a very well-schooled fighter and a huge welterweight. You know, I think Tommy. You know, I love Mayweather. And Mayweather's a great fighter, but I think Tommy Hearns definitely beats him at welterweight. I don't really see even an issue there. I think Tommy Hearns is just a fearsome welterweight, and Sugar Ray Leonard was an equally fearsome welterweight. Sugar Ray Leonard kind of has a reputation as a boxer and a pretty boy boxer. But if you watch Sugar Ray Leonard closely, Sugar Ray Leonard was a killer, and he had the heart of a champion and the heart of a lion. And you know, I think those two definitely would be more than a match for Mayweather. You know, no kind of blowout or anything. I mean, Mayweather's right in there, but I think both guys had a little something extra that Mayweather hasn't had to deal with yet.
Yeah, you've really cheered me up there, Mr. Scully, because I thought long and hard about this, and I actually choose Tommy Hearns. I think Floyd beat Sugar Ray Leonard, but I actually chose Tommy Hearns. At first, I thought stylistically, Paul Williams would be the perfect style to fight Mayweather, but of course, Paul Williams isn't up there. He's not up there in the all-time greats list. I think stylistically, he's the guy. But if you got Tommy Hearns fighting sort of in that way, I think Tommy Hearns is the one guy in history that I would choose over Floyd Mayweather. Now, back on the subject, in the Ward fight. Now, this was great, but not from your point of view, I can imagine. It became quite clear to observers that the fight was going strongly in one direction. Now, firstly, at what stage in the fight did you see, right, this really ain't going our way tonight, guys? And secondly, as a trainer, what do you say to your fighter every time he comes to the corner, and how do you keep it together? Like, what did you say to him? Like,
well, you know what? When we I thought we started out good. The first two rounds, I was like, okay, you know, we're in this. You know, he's got his wits about him. And what happened was in the third round, Chad got caught with a shot that didn't appear to be very hard, and he was hurt by it. And I think he went down. And that's, you know, I knew right at that moment that the weight loss, you know, was a huge issue. You know, because your equilibrium goes, your legs go, and you know those. I mean, all due respect to Andre, but I mean those punches. Chad's been hit by Adam Mack and Glenn Johnson and Antonio Tarver, and he didn't go anywhere. And, you know, now he's got a super middleweight hitting him and just dropping him. So it's obvious that there was more at work there. And when Chad was in the corner, it's like he was a little, you know, disoriented, not enough where I would be justified in stopping the fight. I mean, you know, you have to put forth an effort. But I didn't feel, after he was getting hurt a couple times and seeing the way the vibe of the fight was going, I didn't feel like he was going to be really receptive to specific instructions. I don't think his body was going to react to carry it out. But the fact is, I mean, I've been through that in my own career where I had to lose weight for fights, and you know, your brain and your body aren't necessarily connected as far as, you know, physically. So what I was trying to do in the corner was more mentally. I was trying to motivate him to get him to dig himself out of this hole mentally and just, you know, emotionally. But you know, sometimes the mind can overcome the body, and sometimes it can't. And in this case, it just couldn't. He was trying. I mean, there was times in the fight when Chad, you could see he was forcing himself to throw the punches, and he was, you know, he had a little bit of success here and there, but just physically he couldn't sustain it. And you know, and that's what happens when you do that. When you lose the weight like that, and you force yourself to do it. People think it's easy, that you just lose a few more pounds and it's not that big of a deal. But you know, if you look at De La Hoya with Pacquiao, and you look at Sugar Ray Leonard with Terry Norris, and you look at Roy Jones when he came back to fight Tarver, It's never happened. The guys don't go down at weight and fight the elite and win. It just never happened.
Okay, D, I'm sorry for leaving you out for so long. Would you like to ask Mr. Scully a few questions?
Yeah, absolutely. How are you feeling today, Mr. Scully?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm good, man. Glad to have you here. I just want to get into a little bit of the training camp you had for the Ward fight. Now, during camp, we was hearing from the camp that weight wasn't an issue. And, obviously after the fight, we could kind of see it in the fight. But you don't think as a trainer, I'm not saying specifically you or his personal trainer, if the weight wasn't going right, is that something you would publicly say? Like, listen, we're going to make 168, but we're struggling. Or that's just something, even if it's going bad, you'd say, no, wait, we're going to make 168 fine.
Right. The fact is you have to, it's why, it's funny, but to me, it's like before a fight, when a reporter, like I had so many reporters calling me before the fight every day, just like doing interviews, and they're saying, all right, so how's the weight going to be? Now, before the fight, there's no way I can say, oh, the weight's going to be trouble. He's been sucking weight. He's been looking miserable. His attitude sucks. It's just you can't do it. You just cannot do it. You have to. It's almost like, and I actually sent out an email to many of my friends in the media after the fight, and because so many people were saying, oh, John Scully said before the fight that it was going to be no problem, and I'm saying, what do you guys think I'm going to say? It's like, if you ask me a question that I can't answer, then you gotta, whatever answer I give you, that's what you're gonna have to accept. I can't tell you the truth. I can't tell you it's just like you take Muhammad Ali before he fought Larry Holmes. Ali was a zombie in that fight. Well, there's no way that Angelo Dundee could say, yeah, Ali's looking really bad. He'll be lucky if he throws 20 punches around. He can't. If they're not going to pull out of the fight, he can't do it. So there's no way a reporter can ask me any question that will require from me anything but the best possible answer. If my guy gets hit by a bus the day before the fight, and you ask me how he's feeling, I'm going to tell you he feels great. That's just the way it is. There's no way I can tell you anything different.
Yeah. Hey, I hear that. Also, Scully, now, obviously you know about the Chad situation and how he never contacted you to let you know that he was moving on. Now, I know it's going to be kind of awkward, but if Chad was to call you and say, look, John, I'm sorry for what I did. I want to come back. Are you willing to, bring him back with open arms? Or that's it, this is it, as far as, trainer-fighter relationship?
Nah, to be honest, I couldn't see that. To be honest with you, I'll tell you, his mentality lately, since he won the title from Hopkins, he kind of had that air about him. As I told you, it was different for the last camp. And after he won this title, it's kind of like he had an air about him that I never saw before. Like he was telling me what we were going to do in the gym, and I'm not one to argue with the guy. I'm the trainer. You pay me to be your trainer. I know I'm the trainer. You know I'm the trainer. I'm not going to argue with you to make my point and my situation known. My position is the trainer. And I just, that would never happen. I wouldn't believe him. If he did say that, I wouldn't believe him. And, that ship has definitely sailed on my half.
Absolutely. Hey, I respect that, man. Like you say, you knew him since 11, so you know him real well. Now, John, I just want to play this little name game here. I'm just gonna name. I'm gonna name some trainers here, and I just want you to say the first thing that comes to your mind when I say these names. All right. So, my first name, Nazim Richards.
Psychological. That's That's his game, psychological. He's a mental, what I call a mental trainer. He gets inside the head of everybody involved in the situation. And I know that I've known that him since 1994. Way before the rest of the boxing world ever even heard of him. So I've known him a long time, and I've always, from the first time I met him in 1994 in Cincinnati, Ohio, I've known that. He's a really, into the mental aspects of boxing.
All right. Angel Garcia.
He's a wild man. That guy. I'll tell you what, the first time I dealt with him, I was at the press conference when Chad fought Hopkins and his son fought Campbell on the undercard. And I actually had to speak right after Angel Garcia. He went before me, and he just set that press conference on fire. I mean, it was out of control. I thought him and Campbell were going to have a fist fight right there on the platform. And I was next. And the first thing I said to the media, I said, wow, that's a hard act to follow. I don't know what I can say to impress you guys now, because I know you guys are still writing about this guy while I'm talking. But he builds up the fight. He sells the tickets, and and so far, love him or hate him, he hasn't been wrong.
You're right. Roger Mayweather.
Boy, funny. I've dealt with Roger. I think he's a funny guy. I think a lot of people dislike him because of his. He can be abrasive, and he just doesn't seem to care what he says. But I've actually talked on the phone with him quite extensively one time, and I dealt with him in the gym in Vegas, and he's actually a pretty good guy, and he's in a great position. I mean, he's got the best fighter in the world, and Roger was a great fighter in his own right in his day. I was actually a fan of his when I was a kid. So, I think he's funny. I think he's probably misunderstood. I think a lot of people might not like him, when they see him do his act. But as a man, as a person, one-on-one, I can't say anything bad about the guy.
All right. Just two more left. Robert Garcia.
To be honest with you, I've never dealt with Robert Garcia. I really don't know that much about, his I know he's training some good guys, but I really don't know well enough. I haven't really seen his work in the corner on TV. I haven't really paid attention. So I can't really say one way or the other about Robert.
All right. And of course, Emmanuel Stewart.
A legend. Like he's the guy next to the word legend in the dictionary. I've dealt with Emmanuel many times. I was actually in a training camp with Vladimir Klitschko. I had a guy sparring with Klitschko, and Emmanuel was there, and he, I really learned a lot from him. I picked his brain, and he was it was amazing. I'll tell you a funny story. When I was, I must have been 13 when Leonard and Hearns fought the first time. And I just remember, Emmanuel was a young guy at the time. He was much younger than I am now. He was only in his mid-30s when he was training Tommy for that fight. And him and Angelo, they were the two focal points of the training, obviously. And I just remember being a kid and just being amazed at, Emmanuel Stewart. He's the big name. Him and Angelo Dundee are the two biggest trainers in the world. And here it was about 28 years later, and I was in Vladimir Klitschko's camp with my fighter, and Emmanuel had one of his fighters there, an undefeated super middleweight, was training, and he needed some sparring. So I told him, I said, hey, I got my gloves, so if you have a headgear, I'll spar with your guy. So they put me in for 2 days in a row, and we sparred. We had some really good work, and Emmanuel was working my corner, and he's giving me water between rounds, and I just remember I was just enjoying it so much just because he's giving me advice, and all I'm thinking is, wow, 29 years ago, I was watching this guy on TV, reading the magazines about him, and here he is giving me water between rounds, giving me, technical advice, and that was when I knew I had kind of come full circle as a boxing fan to just being right in there in the mix with one of the great trainers.
And of course, John Scully. What would you want people to say about you?
For me, I'm very appreciative of where I'm at. Wherever I'm at. I don't know where I'm at. I'm just training guys. I don't know what people think of me at all. But you know, I love boxing. I'm just trying to help my guys to do the best they can, and you know, I just hope people recognize that I'm just trying to make it just like anybody else. I'm not big-headed, but I'm not trying to be quiet either. I'm just trying to make my way, and hopefully I get the opportunities to do my thing. So I plan to be here for a while, definitely.
Absolutely, man. I mean, thanks. And you still at the Lions Den? You still train out of the Lions Den?
Exactly. Yep, Middletown, Connecticut.
Yeah, man. I like that name, man, because you know when I was single, that's what I named my bedroom. You know, the Lions Den. So you know, there'll be some good sparring there. You know what I mean? But
yes, sir.
You know, John Scully, man. Thank you so much for your time, man. You know, been a great guy. You know, I hear it in your voice. You know, I see nice things for you in the future. You know, hopefully, you know, when it's all said and done, you'll be up there with the Emmanuels and the Dundees, man.
That'd be beautiful, and I appreciate you guys having me on the show, definitely.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mr. Scully. We really appreciate it. You've been really open. You've been really cool to us. We'll look forward to getting you on again in the future, possibly sometime.
Oh, I look forward to it. Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay?
Take care for now.
All right, guys.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, John Scully, everyone, that was brilliant, wasn't it? Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, man. He you know, he really wanted to be on, and he you know, he was real talkative, and he didn't duck nothing. He answered everything honestly. So you know that's what we asked for, and you know, I always like Scully, man, and I'm just more of a fan after this interview. So yeah, very great guy.
Can't fault the guy. Now, we've got another great treat for you. We've got the newly crowned WBO featherweight champion of the world, Mikey Garcia, is ready to talk.
First of all, Mr. Garcia, I'd like to congratulate you on winning the WBO featherweight title last weekend. What emotional state are you in? Has it actually sunk in that you've won the title? Because at the time you seemed a bit caught up in the moment.
Yes, well, you know, we had a very good night. So, you know, from the beginning, I felt, you know, like I was winning the entire night. So the ending decision was not any surprise to me. I thought, you know, like we were winning every single round, so the result was no surprise. But you know, it wasn't the best, you know, way to end the fight. You know, getting stoppage over a headbutt, accidental headbutt. You know, it's not probably the best way, but I still feel like, you know, I showed everybody, you know, who I really am fighter and why I deserve to be world champion. So overall, I think it was a night, and I'm very happy now. You know, now that I can realize, you know, the accomplishment that I have now, and you know, to become world champion and be recognized as the best featherweight in the world is great. It's a great feeling.
Now, it's highly publicized that your trainer and older brother is Robert Garcia, one of the best in the business. How does it feel that you and him can now share this together?
Well, it's great. Like I said, it's not just a victory for myself, it's a victory for the entire team. Another world champion under my brother's tutelage, and you know, for the family. You know, my brother was former world champion, my dad was his trainer, my dad trains me, so it's a victory for the entire family to have another family member world champion.
Now, we've saw it from you before, but this was your first world title shot. This was the biggest fight of your career by a long time. How do you keep this veteran approach where you just don't seem to get nervous or don't seem to feel any pressure? Where do you get that from? Where does that come from?
I think it comes from just being around boxing my whole life and growing up in the sport. You know, experiencing big fights, big events with my brother Robert and with my dad Eduardo Garcia, with Fernando Vargas, and just being around the atmosphere. To me, this is normal. It's just a normal day, just any other day. Like I said, I don't feel any pressure. I don't feel any nervous or anything like that. You know, my brother taught me very well. My dad, you know, they gave me good advice on how to prepare for these things. So it's no new thing for me. I just have to make sure I do the job in the ring.
Now, your first round of World Championship boxing went absolutely perfect for you. You knocked him down twice. What did Robert say to you when you sat down in the corner, and what did you think at that moment?
We got to the corner, you know, during the break, and my brother and my dad were very happy with the first round, you they just, kept telling me to stick to my game plan, not to get overconfident, not to get overexcited either. He would come back up. If he gets dropped, he comes right back up and strong. So we were very careful of that. They just kept reminding me not to engage in a slugfest with him early on. He was still fresh in the fight, still looking to win. So we just had to stick to the game plan. And I felt like that was the way to beat him. So we kept doing what we were doing.
Now, we saw your power demonstrated in a number of your previous fights in both hands. But taking into account that A, Salido is a top-class opposition, and B, he's known to have quite a strong chin, did you expect for your power to have such an influence so early on in the fight?
Well, I know he's very tough and very durable. He does go down from good punches. He has gone down several times before, but I felt that we needed to be aware that if I do drop him early on, he would get right back up and keep fighting just the way he does. He doesn't get discouraged easily, so we were expecting, to have him be there all night long, and that's exactly the way it was turning out. I dropped him several times, but he kept coming every single time with the same intention, same motivation to win.
Now, of course, you broke your nose at the end of the 8th round, which led to the stoppage of the fight. What has been said about this with regards to, have you gone and saw a medical professional? What have they said in terms of recovery?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Sorry. Of course, the doctor stopped the fight after the 8th round because you've broken your nose. What has the doctor said about in terms of recovery? How long is this going to take to recover?
I actually have a scheduled appointment for next week for a surgery. He tried to push the nose, the fracture back in place, but it wasn't moving anywhere. So we have to go to a surgery procedure next week. He said I'd be out during recovery for at least 2 weeks with some kind of cast around my nose area, and after that we have to wait to get it healed properly. But I need to do the surgery next week.
Now, I, like most people, predicted for you to win a wide unanimous decision. I thought Salido would at least win a round or two, though. Did you expect it to be slightly more competitive?
I thought it would be more competitive after a few rounds. Maybe he would adjust and try to do something different to invite me to an exchange of punches or cut the ring a little more. And he did try, but I was just very prepared, I think, for everything. We did a great job in training, so I was very prepared to keep fighting, my fight. And I have, all the confidence in the world that I'm always a better fighter than him. So I have no problem, dealing with whatever he had. And as you can see, I did perfectly well all night long, all the rounds.
Now, we saw from you last weekend a full repertoire of shots. You were throwing every shot possible. We also saw the patience and maturity that a lot of people subscribe to you already. But this is stuff that the top fighters, very few top fighters are as mature as you are in the ring. Never mind from a guy that's only 25 years old. But of course, nobody's perfect. And when you assess yourself as a fighter, do you find any significant gaps? Because a lot of us would look at you and say that you are the complete article.
Well, I feel that I have everything to be here for a long time and show everybody, that I am truly the best. And last Saturday night I just showed everybody a part of that. It was my first world title fight. People got to see a little more than they usually see in my fights. They were able to see more of my skills, not just my power. I feel that, the more I fight top guys and another champion, the more the people are really going to see that I am the total package and that I am, the best fighter in the world in my division. And that's what we plan on doing. We plan on unifying titles for the champions. We plan on fighting anybody in the division that's up and coming, good prospect that people, want to see. I'm open to fighting everybody because that's the only way to prove yourself.
Of course. Now, what do you make of Salido's comments that he's demanding a rematch? He's saying that you quit. It was actually your corner that pulled you out, and that he just sort of tried to suggest that you're not as honourable as you would like to think you are.
Well, I offered him a rematch as soon as the fight was over. As soon as they announced me as a winner, I told him, I would gladly give you an opportunity to fight for.
As you would like to think you. First of all, Mr. Garcia, I'd like to congratulate you on winning the WBO featherweight title last weekend. What emotional state are you in? Has it actually sunk in that you've won the title? Because at the time you seemed a bit caught up in the moment. As you would like to think you. First of all, Mr. Garcia, I'd like to congratulate you on winning the WBO featherweight title last weekend. What emotional state are you in? Has it actually sunk in that you've won the title? Because at the time you seemed a bit caught up in the moment.
Yes, well, we had a very good night. So from the beginning I felt like I was winning the entire night. So the ending decision was not any surprise to me. I thought like we were winning every single round, so the result was no surprise. But it wasn't the best way to end the fight. Getting
as you would like to think you are.
Well, I offered him a rematch as soon as the fight was over. As soon as they announced me as a winner, I told him, I would gladly give you an opportunity to fight for the title. Just as you gave me the opportunity, I'm willing to fight you again and give you a rematch. Like I said, I'm open to fighting anybody, and if he wants a rematch, he can have another rematch. There's always going to be other critics and other people who are going to say one thing or another, but I have no problem with that.
Okay, so you intend to fight Toledo for a second time in your next fight?
I offer that, and I'm sure, my management will not have any problems, with that. It's up to, the promoter and the manager.
As you would like to think you are?
Well, I offered him a rematch as soon as the fight was over. As soon as they announced me as a winner, I told him, I would gladly give you an opportunity to fight for the title. Just as you gave me the opportunity, I'm willing to fight you again and give you a rematch. Like I said, I'm open to fighting anybody, and if he wants a rematch, he can have another rematch. There's always going to be other critics and other people who are going to say one thing or another, but I have no problem with that.
Okay, so you intend to fight Toledo for a second time in your next fight?
I offer that, and I'm sure, my management will not have any problems, with that. It's up to, the promoter and the manager on his side to either, take the fight or if they decide to do another fight for them, I heard that he might move up to 130 pounds, so, they may have other plans for him. We just have to focus on what's next for me and keep our options open,
Yeah, now, Toledo was a legitimate shout for the #1 featherweight in the world, and now you've beat him in such a dominating fashion. Do you believe that you have beat the best, or do you believe that there's other fighters there that would prove to be a tougher fight?
I think I showed everybody that I truly am the best. He was very, very, very well prepared. I'm assuming he got in the best shape possible. I was expecting, the best Orlando Toledo Saturday night, and that's why we also prepared the best. If it made it seem easy, it's because I was the better fighter. I mean, that's what I've done in all my fights. They're supposed to be tough fights for me, and I make them look easy. Why? Because I'm that good. I'm that good of a fighter. I can do many things that, people don't see, but it's the little things, the little details that count, and that's what makes the difference inside the ring.
Now, you expressed a desire to unify the division and actually solidify your role as the #1. At this stage of your career, any fight against any of the other title holders in a unification bout would be worthwhile for you. But if you had to choose one of them, one of the other title holders, who would you shoot for?
Well, I wouldn't, choose one over another. I'm open to fighting anybody. The champion is, Chris John, who's, champion for many, many years now. You got, other fighters like Billy Dave and Daniel Ponce de Leon. Now, some of those fights I know are very hard to be made, due to promotional disputes and whatever. So some of those fights are not very likely to happen, but I'm open to fight anybody. I'm sure everybody's open to fight, me as well. It just, depends on the promoter and the managers, who handle the champions.
Other guys in your division also on the way up are guys like Gary Russell Jr. and Javier Fortuna, who've both been causing stirs like you have. would you agree that ending the hopes of one of these guys or both of these guys gives you just as much credibility as fighting one of the more established guys would be?
I would definitely give them an opportunity. They're coming up just the way I was, and I saw that guy deserve a fight. A year or almost 2 years ago, and I wasn't giving that opportunity. So of course I would give them an opportunity. But we got to be realistic. Sometimes the promoters won't do these fights. I know De La Hoya has passed a few opportunities for Gary Russell, and Fortuna's also interim champion now. So I'm sure he wants his opportunity, and Gary Russell too. But with promotional disputes, you gotta be realistic, and some of these fights aren't likely to happen.
Of course, your division is quite a strong one, and it's quite an open one. But arguably a stronger division would be the one beneath you at super bantamweight, which has the three big kingpins in Abner Mars, Benito Donaire, and obviously Rigondeaux. Now, I believe some of these fights could constitute career-defining wins for you. Would you see any value in fighting these guys should they choose to move up?
Definitely. If Morris were to do a promotional contract with the Top Rank, then those fights could happen if he does something with Top Rank. But as long as he stays with Golden Boy, it's not likely to happen. Rigondeaux, that could happen. If he gets too up because he wants to try the 126 division, then yes, I'm open to fighting him. I think a lot of people regard him as one of the best super bantamweights, along with Donaire. So if Rigondeaux moves up and they want to do that fight, of course, I'm not going to say no to anybody. I've never said no to anybody, and I won't say no to anybody.
Now, one interesting fight that you mentioned was actually a move up to fight Yuriorkis Gamboa. Now, unlike you, Gamboa was shown a few flaws up to date in his career, despite the fact that he seems very, very skillful. Are you confident that you could expose these weaknesses in a way that would get him out of there, as opposed to just knocking him down and then being beat later on in the fight?
I think he's very talented. He's got very fast hands and very good punching power. But I think my skills as far as intelligence and defense are superior to what he has. And I think that's how I can take advantage of the fight. He gets a little overexcited and gets a little wild sometimes and leaves himself open. So I can definitely take advantage of those opportunities.
One thing that I found out about you when doing my own work was that you actually used to work in the police force. Now, is this something that you'd like to get back into after your boxing career?
Not right now, not for the moment. Maybe after I'm done with boxing, I do something like that. But right now, I'm just main focus is boxing.
Okay. Is there anything that you'd like to pass on to your fans in terms of social networking information or any businesses you'd like to promote? This is going to be played on the air, so you can plug anything you'd like to.
Well, I don't have anything right now, but like always, just thank everybody for all the support. They've been a great part of my career.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Garcia, and I'll look forward to speaking to you soon. I hope that you recover well, and congratulations again for winning the title.
Sure thing. Well, thank you very much.
Mikey Garcia, everyone, a really humble world champion, but a potential future Hall of Famer. I know I'm speaking too soon now, he's 25 years old, but a really, really impressive fighter now. I'd like to go through some other results which have occurred in the past week. They include Max Bursak's win of the European Middleweight Championship against Julien Marie Saint, which was in France. In Berlin, Germany, the highly touted Eduard Gutznecht defended his European light heavyweight title in a 3-round TKO against Jürgen Bremer. We had female world title action in Mexico when Yasmin Rivas defended her IBF bantamweight world title against Maria Elena Villalobos in a split decision. On the Juan Manuel Lopez undercard in Bayamon, Puerto Rico, Jose Gonzalez extended his undefeated record to 21-0 when he fought the WBA Latino lightweight title bout against Alejandro Rodriguez. In Las Vegas, Nevada, Frankie Gomez and Mickey Bay Jr. kept their undefeated records with wins against Leonard Lane and Robert Rodriguez, respectively. Andre Durrell fought as a light heavyweight in the Convention Center in McAllen, Texas, getting a unanimous decision against Michael Gabenga. The UIC Pavilion hosted a great show where Carlos Molina outboxed former world champ Corey Spinks. Also, a sad day for boxing as ring legend Jose Luis Castillo was defeated by Antoine Smith. Super middleweight contender Donovan George was also on the card. He secured a first-round knockout victory against James Cook. Now, moving on to Puerto Rico, Juan Manuel Lopez beat Aldemar Santos of Brazil in 9 rounds. Now, being a Puerto Rican yourself, did you enjoy this fight?
I definitely did. It's good to see Juan back. It wasn't an easy fight. He had to work for this, which is good. After being about close to a year off, he needed the rounds, he needed the work. But to be honest, I'm very prideful Puerto Rican. I love my fighters, but I'm a realist at the end of the day. And Juan is who he is. He's a hard puncher, but his footwork is real suspect. He doesn't have real good head movement. He gets hit too easy. But he's an exciting fighter, so he's always going to be a fighter that's going to be on networks, if he keeps winning. He's a name. But I really, to be honest, I don't see him really succeeding much. He'll definitely be in another big fight, but I think that's where it ends. I think the next time he fights an elite fighter, he'll be finished. Perfect example, Mikey Garcia against Juanma. Now, styles make fights. We saw what Mikey did to Salido. We saw what Salido did to Juanma. You can't say, imagine what Mikey does to Juanma, because that was the same thing. Look what Margarito did to Cotto the first fight. Look what Mosley did to Margarito. Cotto beat Mosley. So you can't go based on that. But Juanma, he looked okay. The opponent was there, for Juanma to look good, and he looked okay. So let's see where he goes from here now. I believe Bob Arum gonna give him another touch up or two before he gets in there with somebody serious.
Well, of course, I completely agree with you in some respects, Dean. Now, of course, Lopez was coming back after a disappointing loss against Orlando Salido and really just wanted an easy fight to give his own fans a showcase of his talent. And he got even better than that. He got a bit of competition. He got a bit of a challenge, and he was allowed to demonstrate his skills. And as you say, he is an exciting fighter. He does have suspect areas. He's not brilliantly polished, but I disagree with you where you say he's going to get a big fight and he's not going to carry on from this. I think he's very capable of being able to move up to super featherweight and win a title in a third weight class. I don't see that as being out of the question. I think Mikey Garcia beats Lopez quite convincingly, but I think he could go for another shot at Salido. He could go for another shot at a super featherweight title. Names that have been mentioned are Mikey Garcia and also the brother of Israel Vasquez, Wilfredo Vasquez Jr. has been mentioned. What do you see as the best option for Juan Manuel Lopez moving forward? Would you say fight at featherweight and try and get a title back, get another big fight, or would you expect him to go for Puerto Rican boxing history by going in for a third weight class?
Yeah, if he moves up to junior lightweight, I believe that's what he needs to do. And if I'm not mistaken, this fight was I think contracted at 128. So that's pretty much it's a lightweight, it's a junior lightweight fight. Technically, anything above 120, 126 it's lightweight, junior lightweight. So I said it from the first Salido fight. He looked drained to me. He looked drained. And in the second fight was the same thing. His movement wasn't the same. If you look at his fights against Steven Luevano, his fights with Bernabe Concepcion, his fights with Rafael Marquez, that's not the same Juanma fight, the same Juanma fight at 126 that for Salido at 126. You just can look at them tapes and you see the difference. Now, it's no excuse. You understand? And that was a big concern, especially in his first camp with Salido, that it was more about cutting weight opposed to training. So, that's not a good thing. I like him to move up to 130, and a good fight for him stylistically will be Wilfredo Vasquez Jr. It's an all Puerto Rican fight. It's a fight that could be made easy. it's first, they don't like each other, so it has a good story. These guys really, it's personal. It's not that, I want to fight him out. These guys really don't like each other. So it'll be a great fight stylistically. They both like to bang. They like Wilfredo Vasquez more. He could box a little bit more, but he likes to bang it up. So Juan and Wilfredo Vasquez fight will be the fight I would love to see next for Juan.
Well,
or maybe, yeah.
If we were to suppose that Juan got through that fight as a stepping stone towards a title shot at super featherweight, you see, super featherweight is not a particularly strong division. Now you've got the guys at the top like Gamboa, Salgado, Uchiyama of Japan, and then you've got guys who hold titles like Gamaliel Diaz, who has been beat by much lesser opposition than Lopez. Do you see it to be quite easy for him to get in there and become an elite fighter in super featherweight quite quickly?
It's very possible. We know nobody works like Top Rank. They can get him, a title fight. Hey, you got a fighter at Rocky Martinez, another Puerto Rican fighter who has a belt. And I think that's a fight that'll also be an exciting fight. Walmart, Rocky Martinez. But, you got fighters up there, Top Rank. For example, you have Magdaleno. Diego Magdaleno up there, which is being considered opponent for Rocky Martinez. You got Juan Carlos Burgos. Now, Juan Carlos Burgos, Juan fight, oh man, that'd be a fight right there. That'd be a Salido Juan fight all over again. Mexican, Puerto Rican. But that's not a fight I know for a fact Top Rank won't rush him into. I see him with definitely the next fight will be another touch up, a little bit above his last opponent, Santos. But then I see him, his third fight this year being somebody, a solid fighter.
All right, now we're going to briefly talk about the Carlos Molina Corey Spinks fight, and then we're going to have a couple more quick things to discuss. Now, past weekend, Carlos Molina beat Corey Spinks in a 12-round unanimous decision in an IBF eliminator, granting him a potential title shot. After a long time of us thinking that Carlos Molina is a good fighter and deserves a title shot, are you happy for him, Dave?
Yes. I mean, Molina's one of them fighters who just can't get over the hump in boxing. He's not the prettiest fighter. He's not the most exciting fighter, but the guy is smart. He reminds me of like a Bernard Hopkins in a way. He's like, he uses these tactics. He likes to get inside. He likes to clinch. He counters. He doesn't let you get off your combinations. He's a real solid fighter, man. And he put a hurting on Spinks. He put a real hurt in. Molina's been looking good ever since the James Kirkland fight, which he was winning. Yes, he got knocked down in that round. It was about 2 more rounds left. So we don't know how that fight would have ended. If he could have just ended that fight on his feet, he would have got the decision. But we don't know. Kirkland seemed like he was coming on. But ever since that fight, Molina's been looking good. Spectacular. I wouldn't say spectacular wins. He's just looking real good. And going forward, I see him, getting in now. He gets a title shot. Maybe, Canelo. I know that's a fighter that a lot of people would like to see, and a lot of people wouldn't. But will Golden Boy be willing to put a Carlos Molina with Canelo? He's that fighter that he could spoil you. He's a spoiler. I felt he should have got that edge over Lara on that Friday night fight.
Dave?
So, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm pretty happy for Carlos Molina. I think he deserved it when he got a really impressive win, and here's to hoping that he does well against. Hopefully, let's hope that he gets a title shot against the winner of K9 versus Ishii Smith, and then why not? Let's hope that he wins it and moves on, because he's as you say, I like watching fighters like Carlos Molina and Bernard Hopkins, really crafty fighters. Now we've got 2 more quick points I'd like to make. Floyd Mayweather was supposed to announce his next fight at the Super Bowl. Now, who do you believe his next opponent's going to be, Dave?
It's going to be you, John. It's going to get inside. You fighting Mayweather next.
I don't know. I'm past those days. I think I could have a few years back, but
if it ain't Guerrero, then who else? I feel it's Guerrero. He's a welterweight. Because you know Mayweather, he's about money. You can't blame him at this stage, but I would like to see him. To be honest, I would like to see him fight a fighter like Austin Trout. Now, a lot of people say, oh, but Austin Trout. Listen, Austin Trout just beat Miguel Cotto. Miguel Cotto is number 3 pay-per-view wise behind, of course, Mayweather and Pacquiao. So people's going to tell me nobody know who Trout is freaking lying. You know, he's not a super household name, but people know who Trout is after fighting Cotto. Why not? You're ready for that 154 against Miguel Cotto. Why not challenge yourself? People know regardless who Mayweather fights, that's a million. It's going to be at least a million pay-per-view buys. You know, if Mayweather takes on Guerrero, okay, solid welterweight. You know, he had 2 big wins at welterweight. He kind of earned his right to fight a Mayweather. But I think that fight he's just tailor-made for Mayweather. Then he dominates Guerrero. Everybody talks about how great he is. And it's like, come on, man, seriously? Like, you know, that's why I would like to see Mayweather challenge himself. Say, you know what, I already fought. And what kills me is people like to say, oh, but, you know, Trout is too big for Mayweather. Okay, but when nobody was saying nothing, you know, oh, see, Mayweather's going to 154 to fight Cotto. He's fighting him at his weight. Oh, so he could fight Cotto at 154 because he's a small junior middleweight. But he can't fight Austin Trout at 154? It's like, come on, man. That doesn't make sense. Fight the best. That's all I ask. Yeah, people's going to say, oh, but money. Mayweather's rich, man. Doesn't matter who he's fighting. He's going to get 20-plus every fight. No matter who he fights, challenge yourself. You want to be considered one of the greatest, this is how you do it. You take on the fighter like Trout. But it's not going to happen.
I completely agree, and I don't think it's going to happen, but you're right about the double standards that a lot of fans do have in boxing on both sides of the circuit. People who agree with Floyd Mayweather, people who disagree with Floyd Mayweather. Personally, I think Canelo doesn't deserve the fight just yet. I think Trout deserves the fight and would actually present Mayweather problems. We both agree that Martinez Mayweather is the fight that we want to see, but we'll put that aside because it's not going to be happening at the moment. What about a Marquez second fight and a Pacquiao fight, surprisingly enough? I'm going to throw that one in there because I think that's quite possible. What do you make of them 2 fights?
Oh, you know, at this stage, of course, the Pacquiao Mayweather fight, you know, lost a lot of steam. But it's a fight I still like to see. Styles make fights at the end of the day. There was nothing in that Pacquiao fight against Marquez that told me that Pacquiao was old. He was looking good until he got knocked out. Hey, it happens. But he was breaking Marquez. His nose was broke. He knocked him down as well. He was looking good. He just got caught with that punch. So, of course, I still like to see a Mayweather-Pacquiao. As far as a Marquez-Mayweather fight 2 goes, I guess. That's all I can say. I don't want to see it. I really don't. You know, Mayweather, you know, showed, you know, in the first fight, and we know, what pisses me off that Mayweather fans never want to talk about how he made Marquez come up 2 weight classes, and he still didn't make weight for that fight. You know, it just feels like everything's okay for Mayweather. You know, but any other fighter does it, you know, everybody want to yell at him and give him shit. You know, you got to do the same to Floyd. But, you know, they say, oh, but look at Marquez now, 147. I don't want to see it, but if it happens, I mean, you know, whatever. That's how I feel about a Marquez-Floyd fight, whatever.
Well, the thing with Marquez is the second best guy at welterweight, and after knocking out Pacquiao, he's probably the most deserving. But everything makes sense with the Marquez fight, May the 5th. He's got a whole country behind him. The pay-per-views they'd be off the rankings with a second Marquez fight. Everything goes for this fight, but one thing, And the one thing is that it's just not what the fans want to see. I don't want to see Mayweather dominate Marquez again. He's just slightly better at everything, and he's slightly bigger. And I think it's unfair to Marquez, but at the same time, who am I to sort of protect Marquez? Marquez is a warrior. Marquez would be willing to go in there on Mayweather and try it again. I just think everything works well, except the fact that I just don't want to see it. I'd rather see Marquez is my favourite fighter currently. I'd rather see him fight someone or have a fight which is a lot more fulfilling for him than just another fight with Mayweather in which he might win a couple of rounds, he might win 3 rounds, but he's not going to do much better. Now, who else is there, D? Would you like to suggest any further names?
Now, how about this? Check this out. If Mayweather, all right, I believe we spoke about this off air. If Gennady Golovkin keeps winning, can't get a fight at 160, can't get nothing at 168. It's sad. Abel Sanchez said that Gennady can make 154, no problem. Now, if Gennady wins all his fights this year, all by knockout, spectacular performances, and still can't get no fights, no big names, and, Mayweather goes through this year unscathed as well, why not a fight of Triple G and Mayweather at 154?
Oh, my
now,
God.
I'm just saying, has this set up right. That's what I'm saying. Remember what I said. He wins all these fights this year. I'm not saying this year. He wins all his fights spectacular, like the way he beat Rosado, the way he beat Proska, if he breaks Ishida, and and so on and so forth. Why not Mayweather Golovkin? If he can make 154 with no problem, we know Mayweather fought at 154. Gennady Golovkin, besides Adrian Broner, is the fastest rising star in boxing. That will make all the money. That makes all money sense. You can't tell me no.
Well, what I'll say about that is obviously that would be a great fight. I'd love to see that personally next year. But what I will say is that if nobody's willing to fight Gennady Golovkin, then Mayweather certainly isn't going to risk his undefeated record on a guy like Gennady Golovkin who's bigger. And I like the fact that you touched on weight. You say it's okay for Marquez to move up 2 weight classes to fight Mayweather, but then people protect Mayweather and say, oh, well, if he fights at 154 against Martinez is too big, or Golovkin's too big, or Trout's too big. These guys are too big, but they're not too big, because all you need to do is look at the heavyweight division. You get guys like Eddie Chambers, David Haye, and they're expected. It's not, oh, well, fair play to fighting again. They're expected to fight guys like Klitschko, like Thompson, and like the massive weight difference. It's like 30, 40 pounds sometimes, and it can be as much as sort of 4 or 5 inches. Now, Mayweather can't move up, 10 pounds, and he's the best fighter in the world, one of the best fighters ever. I just think it's a bit unfair. Now, one last time, I'm going to direct you to the RCM store on our website to check out our wide range of products we have. Don't forget to type in Real Combat Media when prompted and you'll receive a 10% discount. Okay then, guys, we've had a great time today, but unfortunately we're out of time. I'd like to thank my co-host once again, the Boxing Maniac. D, it's time to say our goodbyes.
Yeah, I'm just saying, man, and for everybody that called up, man, I'm sorry we couldn't get to you guys. We deeply apologize. Next Monday, we'll definitely have you guys on, man. Bear with us. Thanks for listening. And you already know, you follow the Boxing Maniac at Boogie Down Sean. And, another good show, John. Looking forward to next week.
Yeah, I've had a great time too, and I will apologise to that one persistent caller, but I'm sorry, you was on at the wrong time. We had John Scully and we had Mikey Garcia. All right, check us out at www.realcombatmedia.com for all your worldwide boxing and MMA news. Follow us on Twitter at Real Combat Media. Also follow myself on Twitter at BoxingJonUK. You can also find our Facebook fan pages by typing in realcombatmedia.com and BoxingJonUK. Tune in next week, the same time, same place. It'll be Boxing John UK and the Boxing Maniac talking boxing. Until then, bye-bye for now.